local services.
Morning, everybody. Morning. Give it a couple of minutes for people to join us.
And that money needs to be coming from the top and fed into.
We'll just give it one more minute and then we'll make a start. I understand that there's been some errors with the Eventbrite. Okay, let's make a start. It's 2 minutes past 11, and I'm sure some more people will join us as we get going. So good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. It's great to have you all here on an early morning, an early Monday morning. Today's session is going to be focusing on delivering retrofit and decarbonisation works in the southwest. Could I just politely request that everybody puts their mics on mute, please? I'm getting a little bit of feedback.
Okay, what's your name and address?
Thanks, everyone. So to kick off, I'm Penny Searce and I'm the Regional Manager for the Southwest Procurement Alliance. As I said, today's session is going to focus on retrofit and decarbonisation in the Southwest specifically, because that's what we're interested in. I'm going to just spend a couple of minutes giving a very brief introduction to who we are, what the session is about, and who our speakers are. I'll then pass on to Simon Spencer, who's the National Business Development Manager for Low Carbon Exchange. Low Carbon Exchange have been delivering a lot of work under our current energy efficiency framework, particularly with regards to SHDF Wave 1 and Wave 2 projects. So they'll have a really insightful presentation about how to deliver those sorts of projects successfully and the sort of pitfalls that they've seen in their experience. We'll then pass on to Nick Beard, who is the Technical Officer for the LHC Procurement Group. He's going to take you through our group-wide proposals for our new retrofit and decarbonisation framework, which will replace the current energy efficiency framework. I'd like Nick's session, as well as Simon's session as well, to be interactive. I'd like you to all be able to have your say and input. This is our Southwest Procurement Alliance pre-tender engagement for the new framework, and your opportunity to shape the composition of that new framework. We'll then close off and carry on with our days. So just a little bit about who we are. The Southwest Procurement Alliance were formally launched in October 2019, but we have been operating in the region many years before that. We are the Southwest Regional arm of the LHC Procurement Group, who are a leading not-for-profit purchasing consortium providing best value procurement solutions for construction, refurbishment, maintenance of housing, schools and all public sector buildings. LHC, for those of you that aren't familiar with LHC, have been in operation since 1966, so a really, really long time. And we've always had an offering or work stream supporting the Southwest. We deliver instant access to compliant procurement solutions, and we're well recognised and used nationwide. You can see here on the map that we have a regional business unit strategy and setup. We've got a Welsh Procurement Alliance as well, a Scottish Procurement Alliance, and consortium procurement construction in the north of England. So the team, I'm the regional manager, as I said, Penny Searson. We have Kay Wills as our technical support manager, supporting live contracts and any technical queries that clients or all appointed companies alike might have. We have recently appointed Heather Rowland into the role of regional procurement manager, so she can support clients with all of their procurement needs, even up to the full call-off process. We have Dominica Pluhar, who's our client research officer. She largely deals with the administrative side of framework call-off, and Poppy Stockport in our marketing communications lead role. We are recruiting for a new client support manager, so the team of 5 will soon be a team of 6, and at the moment we are all based in Devon. Just to give you a little look at our different members, lots of you are here today, which is fantastic. We've got 50 associate partners at the moment across a range of sectors. So we've got lots of really prominent local authorities, housing associations, universities, colleges, the Department for Education are on there. So a really good spread of different clients are using and accessing our products and services. Just a little slide with our frameworks and DPSs, so you can see the different categories here in construction, extension and refurbishment. We've got our elemental products, roofing, windows and doors, property protection and maintenance, kitchens, energy efficiency, which we're discussing today. And we also have a very strong consultancy offering in the region, including PAS 2035 consultants. Another little slide based on our sector. So most of our work is currently carried out with local authorities and registered housing providers, closely followed by the NHS trusts, and we're making some really good headway into the education sector at the moment as well, which is a very important sector for us going forward. The graph on the right hand side of the screen demonstrates the kind of split between mini competitions and direct awards. We're finding that clients are opting for direct awards quite often in these current days. They're preferring to collaborate with contractors, and that's particularly pertinent and important with the energy efficiency products as well. Those partnerships are proving to be key at the moment, but mini competitions also offer great value to clients. So just a very, very quick slide on the opportunity. We've been delivering energy efficiency works for over 30 years now as LHC. We know that retrofit and decarbonisation is a key priority to our clients in the southwest, with most of the local authorities committing to achieve net zero carbon by 2030, which is 20 years prior to the government's own commitment. In terms of the framework use across all of our products, which are capable of delivering retrofit and decarb works, we've had 54 projects registered in the southwest alone. That's £41 million worth of work, with 22 different public sector organisations across the multiple sectors we touched upon earlier. I've got 33 live inquiries working their way through the system at the moment. Many of those are in relation to SHDF Wave 2 works, and we're also very excited about the opportunities that are being presented by the public sector decarbonisation schemes as well, with the up and coming Phase C going out shortly. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Simon Spencer from Low Carbon Exchange, who will take you through how to successfully deliver a retrofit and decarb project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Penny. Yes, so as Penny's introduced, I'm Simon Spencer. I'm the Business Development Manager for Low Carbon Exchange. I'm joined today by our Head of Operations, Kevin Robinson, and also our in-house installation and retrofit guru by the name of Steve Britton. So those guys will be, all of us are here for questions. So we do want it to be interactive. So if you have any questions during the presentation, put your hands up or please do interrupt. We have factored in sort of 10 or 15 minutes towards the end for a bit of a Q&A session. So take a bit, jump in early, or we can wait till the end. So the talk will be on delivering successful retrofit and decarbonisation projects in the southwest. It's predominantly we deliver residential work, so in people's homes. I am aware that there are members here today from the NHS and various other backgrounds. So much as this work, this presentation doesn't specifically cover public buildings or commercial properties, I imagine a number of the kind of takeaways and points that we will cover will probably cross over into that sector as well. So without further ado, who are Low Carbon Exchange? We are a PAS 2030-2019 accredited contractor, and we are solely in the renewable technology and building fabric sector. So anything energy efficiency, that is all that we do. Don't do anything else. So as principal contractor, LCX deliver the installation of building fabric and renewables, whether it be individual installation programs, whole house retrofit programs, self-funded, funding from the government. So whether it is a match-funded project, we've delivered across the board. Additionally, we also have a separate division to the business that service and maintain and offer a breakdown service for all renewable technology. So we were founded in 2010. We have offices in Shepperton in Surrey that cover our London and South region. And we have our head office in Weston-super-Mare, an office in Willand near Columpton, and an office in Exeter as well. So as explained, we specialise solely on residential properties, and we only deliver for the social housing and local authority sector. We are currently placed on the SWPA Energy Efficiency Framework. We have found it our most utilised framework in terms of delivering directly awarded projects. As Penny mentioned, we're finding for ease and also for timescales that a lot of our clients are now looking to directly award, as opposed to going to tender. But it is a bit of a mixed bag there, but it's definitely one that is very user friendly. So we've delivered multiple projects across both LADs, so the local authority delivery, 1A and 1B, various different elements of the eco funding, SHDF Wave 1 and currently on Wave 2. These have been delivered to both PAS 2035 standards predominantly, with others choosing where they are self-funding not to go to PAS 2035 standards for ease. So what have we been doing? We've been working with our clients in delivering to the fabric first approach. That's the key element of PAS 2035. So the projects that we typically deliver will often incorporate cavity insulation, extraction, refill. So loft insulation, external wall insulation solutions, and that more often than not these days incorporates PAS 2035 detailing to ensure that they're compliant for funded projects. We then move on to installing the renewable aspects of that, heating, hot water, energy measures such as high heat retentions, heaters, which are typically quantum systems, solar PV arrays, some solar thermal systems, and air source heat pumps tend to be the main measures we see being fitted these days. So smart monitoring systems also get installed. Some of these are as a KPI for the funding criteria, and ultimately these demonstrate the performance and also give greater control to the residents over their new systems. In 2022 and to date in 2023, we will have delivered around 760 properties with multi-measure packages. That's predominantly across the southwest, with our insulation and damp and mould division based out of Willand. They will have delivered in excess of another 550 disc repair jobs. So what we wanted to do today was, based on our experiences, was just outline the pitfalls, examples of best practice. The reason we're doing that is these are the key areas where we've seen substantial delays caused to people's programmes, or additional costs or unplanned costs. So obviously there's a piece around understanding the processes. We know that you guys as HAs, local authorities, or your own independent organisations have a lot of hoops to jump through just to get to the point where you engage with your contractors. but we just want to be able today to offer you our experience and what we see in terms of supporting our clients, and also the areas where we can help you and hopefully reduce those impacts. So one of the first areas that we would suggest our clients stay up to date on is stock condition data. So have the basics ready: cavity conditions, loft levels, existing systems that you have in place, consumer units. A lot of upgrades are currently required and tend to get overlooked. We see a lot of our clients assuming data, so have assumed that the EPC data that might be out of date is correct, and then when we come to actually carrying out surveys and delivering work, we have to revisit a lot of that data, and a lot of it is incorrect. So another suggestion is target the low-hanging fruit, so fabric first approach. Predominantly the fabric approach in terms of loft and cavity, those give you most bang for your buck and are the most cost effective. So if our clients are at the early stages of their journeys, we certainly suggest that we have a look at their data and we target those low-hanging projects. So modelling software recommendations don't always align with funding deliverables. So we have seen examples of both bids and also suggestions that are based around model data, but then when we actually go to carry out surveys and retrofit assessments, the suggestion that maybe we can top a loft up and achieve funding for it and get a property to a C don't always tie in with the funding deliverables from a funding stream. So that's something that our clients need to be aware of. Another one that's overlooked commonly is the hot water provisions. So we have seen many schemes whereby single resident in a property has an electric shower, washes up once a day, but has a 200-litre hot water tank in an uninsulated loft. These are the sort of considerations that we would suggest our clients have a look at and just get a feel for actually what is realistic and what is common sense to deliver to give savings to their residents. So be funding ready, understand the funding stream criteria and expected performance outcomes if your scheme is funded. So we say that these may present themselves as unplanned costs further down the line. More often than not, what happens is there's an element of demonstrating performance outcomes. If they're not logged and they're not noted early doors, they typically will come at a cost and can just take people over budget. So it's certainly something we suggest is just understanding the criteria. Also understand your milestone requirements as well, both for forecasting spend, for forecasting kind of timescales. We help a lot of our clients with that. So certainly if you've engaged with your contractor already, have a conversation with them. I know internally at Low Carbon Exchange, we help a lot of our clients, and on some occasions we actually complete those forms for them. So we're well adverse to it. So agree your organisational drivers. As a result of the retrofit assessments, what our clients plan to deliver sometimes isn't what the recommendations are. So by knowing your driver, whether it be fuel poverty, reducing your residents' bills, so whether you're just trying to hit net zero and achieve carbon positive properties, it might be as an organisation you're looking to achieve the average property rating of C. The driver often dictates the measures. So they might have a choice: do you go with solar PV at a cheaper cost just to hit the C, or do you go with something like a smart hot water tank, which might hit the C, but gets your residents additional savings? So knowing your drivers are quite key, and often there can be cost implications to that as well. So engage with planning and building control. One of the first things we suggest, so this is alongside DNO applications, this is something we would do very early doors. Typically EWI, so external wall insulation, the installation of it, and heat pumps. If you're in an area of natural outstanding beauty or in a conservation area, planning applications, building control will be required. So as a client, I would certainly have a look at those areas above and just make sure that you factored that in. So as Penny alluded to earlier, early engagement with the contractor. Do consider partnering. Maybe don't wait. We know that a lot of these funded projects all are very deadline heavy, certainly in terms of delivery. The reason we suggest that is that from our perspective as a contractor, the things that you may have to consider, does your contractor have, is number one, the capacity to deliver. Do we have the time required to price your tender? Have we got the resource? It may be that we're just assisting you with budget constraints, understanding what your measures are going to be, or it is an out and out tender, but you need to think about your contractors that are pricing your work. Have they got the time in this busy marketplace? So survey requirements for your measures. Lots of things that we have to do. So boroscope searches for cavities, date and time stamping required for PASHub, which is the system that moves projects along through its funding streams. There's many other examples, but these all cause delays. So where you might think we can jump on a project and a week later we've got your survey results, doesn't work like that. We have to do surveys for PV, for heat pumps, for heating. There literally can be 10 or 12 surveys that we have to carry out for each property. So contractor assistance with confirming budgets. As I mentioned a moment ago, this is something we do a lot of, and we will assist our clients in looking at programmes, giving them loose costs and understanding, actually, is this deliverable? And then prior to getting too late on in the programme, we can then maybe suggest different routes to achieving their targets, which might actually fit within their budgets and be more deliverable. So that's something we will do a lot. We ask our clients to focus on the delivery timescales. So we've seen probably more in the early days that clients will focus on what the measures are, what the cost is, other details, and we see the actual timescales of delivery slip away. And we have seen clients that have decided, actually, do you know what, we haven't got the time to deliver this. So maybe they haven't got retrofit assessments done or got the correct data. Certainly a lot of this, those details can be ironed out whilst we are preparing and mobilising for delivery. So it's good to sort of juggle all of the balls and keep yourself moving along the bus, rather than trying to deliver one aspect, wait for that to finish and move on to the next. So as everyone is seeing, there is a big skills gap in the market. So affects contractors a lot. There is a big shortage of resource in the market, and that is for subcontractors that are accredited to deliver things like windows, ground source heat pumps, and a lot of these common measures that we're seeing in retrofit these days, and even to the point where the most common measures that we see delivered, there is also a shortage of people there to deliver the sort of the basic measures as well. So this is all something that we have to juggle as contractors. So know your route to procuring your contract. As Penny mentioned earlier, early engagement with your framework providers. We really like the adjudication piece that is offered by SWPA, which we feel gives our clients peace of mind. Certainly something I would look at if I was a client. The procurement. So are the procurement teams aware within your organisations what you're doing, what the cost of these things are going to be? We often see we're ready to mobilise, and then we'll sit there and we'll be waiting 4, 5, 6 weeks for the procurement teams to do their piece. And that's just downtime. So keep your procurement teams involved throughout that journey. Remember, tendering takes time. Again, Penny mentioned it. A lot of people opt in to go for direct award. Getting your own tender documents together does take time. And is it time that your contractors and potential tenderers have? So JCTs, again, in line with the procurement piece there, we do see delays in legalities, certain aspects of JCTs being put together. If that can be done whilst other elements are being planned, then it just reduces downtime. Provide the right information for your tenderers. One thing to think about is, if you are going out to tender, how attractive is your work to the potential contractors? If you're going out to tender without retrofit assessments, with a loose guesstimation of what your measures might be, if you've got 5 stretched tenderers that are contractors that are very busy, are they likely to pick that up and go, yes, that's one that we can resource and price? It's possible that it might be a turn down for them. So DNO applications, if solar is being considered, ensure you've contacted your DNO, so your district network operator. Restrictions may be set, and these often impact the decisions on the system size, budgets, restrictors, so that can often have an impact on your costs. And obviously considering that upfront and knowing will just help you plan your budgets a little bit better. At the moment, we say around 12 weeks is the lead time for initial responses, but as more and more of these projects are getting off the ground, we're currently seeing timescales of 4 to 6 months. So, I mean, if you've got PV on your next, on your wave 2 project for year 1, and the deadline is the end of March, then you can see how things are starting to get really tight. So, knowledge share with other HAs and local authorities and organisations. We work with some quite closely, and we know that a lot of you share experiences of best practice and successes. We work with some, and all of them have varying degrees of experience in delivery. So let's collectively learn together and use the resources that we have. Align works with your planned programmes. So consider your existing roof, door and window life cycles. Can they cross over to save costs? One element where we see that quite a lot is the thermal bridging aspect of roof lines. We often carry out works here, but if they are tied in with kind of roof work programs, window and door budgets as well, then cost savings can be made. Another one that we see quite often is when we're delivering cavity extraction and refill is that actually brickwork condition is very poor and not watertight. So always factor in a little bit of budget and just consider that element as well. So probably one of the most important ones is engaging with your residents. Take them on the journey with you. We've seen a lot of our clients, by default, they almost inherit energy champions. So if you've got someone within the community or a resident that is especially engaged or happy, they can have a positive impact on the residents around them. So that is one approach that we've seen work very well. We have our own, and we encourage our clients to produce a resident handbook to educate residents. We see that this improves the take-up of works, and we see less people not interested. They don't see it as a headache. They actually fully understand the impact of the work that's going to be delivered and are more likely to undertake and let you as a HA carry that work out. Another aspect of the engagement element with residents is the bills. It's quite often overlooked, but quite often KPIs for funding will require before and after information in terms of how the property did perform and now performs with the new measures. That can be quite intrusive for residents, so it's certainly something to bear in mind whilst you're doing the engagement piece. Ventilation, so sign off around actual fan flow rates. We are seeing a lot of HAs where they've maybe installed fans in the last 6 months into kitchens, bathrooms. When we actually come to do the sign-off tests for the PAS hub, they don't achieve the permitted flow rate. So what they're being told on the paperwork isn't actually what they're achieving. So certainly something to investigate. Consider tying that in with your existing bathroom and kitchen programs as well for compliancy. Quite often, if you make sure that what's being installed now is compliant and future-proofed, there'll be a lot of cost savings there to be made for you. So material cost increases, big one, hard to sort of gauge this one really, but do factor them in. A lot of frameworks will observe an annual uplift. These can be linked to many different indices, but have a conversation with your framework provider about it. We can give our perspective on it, but ultimately it is dictated by the frameworks themselves. Do talk to us about lead times as well, or your contractors. This also can have a big impact on the deliverables, and actually in the past has caused us to remove measures, swap them out with others because they were just not going to, the materials were not going to arrive in time for the funding deadline. So it's quite an important piece there. Specifications. So ensure you have specifications for the measures that are being delivered. What are your fans? what are your solar PVs, what are your hot water tanks, your air source heat pumps specified in line with your maintenance programs. We are more than happy to assist our clients, and your contractors should also do that as well. Just we have experience of what has been installed, what has worked and what hasn't, so we can impart that knowledge, and that might help you shape your decision on what your spec will be. So updates to SAP, we haven't seen anything current or pending that has meant we've had to make any large adjustments to property modelling or the way we install measures. That may change. Might be some questions around that afterwards, but Steve Britton is our guru on that aspect, so we'll save the questions for Steve. Pathways. So be aware of the difference between the pathways. You have the pathway A, B, and C. Pathway C is 5 measures or more. Things like conservation areas or areas of outstanding natural beauty instantly take you into a pathway C, which is classed as a high risk. The reason we mention this is that additional costs are associated with the significant additional competence and qualification requirements required for the sign-off and design here. So each property that falls into a pathway C will have a significant uplift in terms of the cost to get that property signed off and moved through PASHA. So do your research before engaging with contractors. Ask about previous delivery, their capacity. Those are the key things. We're very open and honest with our clients, and we'd rather turn away work that we don't think we can deliver, and we wouldn't want to damage our reputation. Not to say that others wouldn't do that, but certainly check on their capacity to deliver. It's certainly something we would check. So similarly with professional services as well. So in terms of retrofit coordinators, assessors, they are all in the same boat as us. There's very little resource out there. There is a skill set shortage as well. In line with Pathway C, we are aware that there are some out there that aren't able to sign off Pathway C projects as well. So that is an area that we have seen people get caught out with in the past. Emerging technologies, keep your eye out for technologies, any new systems that can improve SAP scores or help residents in their homes. What we're seeing emerge and sort of put in place now are things like smart hot water tanks. We had a visit to Zero Homes over in Wales. They have the Zero B system, which is ultimately a whole house energy management system. There's a number of these coming in, environmental monitors for damp and mold. These are all things that can impact your SAP score, but also help your residents as well, and actually can give you guys visibility on how properties are performing in a live nature. So Trustmark, bit of a fun fact for you. EWI, external wall insulation, is currently the most rejected measure by Trustmark in terms of it being signed off for funding. We deliver a fair chunk of that, but we see that this measure requires precise programming and planning. Lead times are also up to 16 weeks for Rockwool at present. I think that's just extended out even further, and we're seeing Rockwool being brought in from Poland and various other parts of Europe. But it's not a measure to be taken lightly and just shoehorned into a programme. Do have conversations with specialists about that. So one of our takeaways is that if you have got SHDF Wave 2 money and you are still yet to deliver on your year 1 deadline, it's fast approaching. Certainly wouldn't hang on to it too much longer. I would consider engaging with a contractor and getting, hitting the green button on that ultimately. There is still time to deliver it. It may be that simplification of a program is required to make it deliverable with the timescales because they are shortening. But I think the takeaway there is just don't hold on to it too much longer. So we'd like to extend a welcome. We have a renewables training academy at our Weston-super-Mare office. We set this up around a year ago to sort of support the industry, train our own engineers, educate ourselves, but we carry out things like lunch and learns. So we'll have housing associations in. They can understand how to train up their call centre staff and just deal with residents without having to speak to experts. We also carry out renewable training courses there. And we, being very housing focused, do extend the welcome there. Please do get in touch with us if you feel that your organisation could benefit or you would like to come and learn some more. So again, a shameless plug here. Apologies, Penny. We are at the CIH Housing Southwest event next week in Bristol. Some of you may be going. On the Wednesday afternoon between 3 and 6, we are just holding a decarbonisation tea party where we've got the likes of SPS Envirowall, property maintenance companies, and Dakin, the heat pump manufacturer, all supporting. So we openly extend the welcome there for all of you to come and join us. And on that point, I'd like to open the floor. Any questions around decarbonisation or any of the topics that we've covered off today? Thank you.
Is a question from Rory Henderson. Rory.
Hey Simon, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad. How are you, Rory?
Good. A couple of quick questions, please. You mentioned about changes to SAP methodology. We've also, of course, got past 2035 being updated. We've got Decent Homes 2 coming in as well. What impacts do you think those two things are going to have on the retrofit process, please?
On that note, I might pass that one over to Kevin and Steve, the experts.
I think I'm just going to sit on the fence, Rory. Good morning, Rory. How are you?
Morning.
Okay.
Yeah, good. Thank you. And you?
Yeah, good. Thank you. I think we're going to have to sit on the fence until we know what's coming out, certainly from PAS and SAP, and then again Decent Homes. We just don't know at this point. I'm sure there'll be some curveballs thrown in for everyone to consider, but until they come out or give us even an inkling of what they're going to do next, we just have to sit with bated breath and wait, really.
Certainly from my perspective with past 2035, I'm hoping it will become less onerous. It certainly seems to be obviously the right thing to do, the right thing to follow, but quite restrictive at the same time, which is rather frustrating.
Yeah, of course. And we've still got to stick to the building control and sort of standards that we have to hit. Part F has beefed up, as we all know, and that is becoming quite problematic at the moment. So we're just going to have to wait. Hopefully they will be less onerous to what it was before, but we just don't know. So we just have to wait and see what comes out of the BSI in the next 3 weeks, I think, isn't it? So.
Okay, thanks very much, Kevin.
Thank you, Rory. Just mindful of time. I've got time for another quick question if anybody has one before we move on. No hands at the moment. Deep in thought after a very insightful presentation. Thank you, Simon, ever so much. I will be passing Simon's and the team's contact details on to all attendees. So if you do think of anything that you would like to ask Low Carbon Exchange, please feel free to do so. We'll also be at the CIH Slug and Letters event, and we can't wait. So without further ado, I shall pass the floor over to Nick Beard, who is the technical officer for the LHC procurement group. Nick's going to take you through the proposal for our new energy efficiency framework. So we're really hoping that you all, I can see the list of names here. There's lots of experts. There's lots of people that have experience of delivering retrofit and decarbonisation work here in the Southwest. So please have your say during this next session. Thank you. Over to you, Nick.
Morning, everyone. I'm just going to boot up my slides first. Just double check, can everyone see that? Is that all? Brilliant. Okay, cool. So just a little introduction for myself first. So I'm Nick Beard. I'm the technical officer for the LHC procurement group. So although I will be writing the N9 framework, it won't just be for SWPA, it will also be for the other regions, which I'll give a bit more detail on as we go through the slides. What I'll just say before we sort of go anywhere further with this is that this is our stage 1 proposal. So we have done quite a few months worth of research and we've come to the conclusion on quite a few different things that I'll show you through today. However, we are really interested to hear what everyone thinks, whether it would work for their organisation and any other comments as well. That feedback's really going to help us be able to develop the framework further. And when we come to a stage 2 proposal, we will be taking a lot of these comments on board and trying to make it work for all of our clients and contractors as well. So I'll just go through sort of really what I'm planning to talk about today. I'm aware that this framework is a massive framework. It's going to cover a lot of areas, a lot of different sectors, and I've only got an hour, so I might not be able to touch upon everything. But if there are any questions, obviously following that, I'm more than happy to follow up with calls and speak to people and try and work out if there's anything that we can progress potentially for a stage 2 proposal. So the 5 areas I'm going to sort of go through. I'm going to discuss the background, the strategy, and what sort of changes we've got from N8. And then I'll have a look at our proposed scope, the value bands that we're proposing, and again, they are very much stage 1, so we're open to the floor. And if those values look wildly different from what your organisation delivers, then I really want to hear that, because then obviously we can align that with more what's required. And then obviously we'll discuss the proposed work streams, lots, and value bands as well. And then finally, before I will head off, I'll probably pass over to Penny, because she's probably better than me knowing the area in terms of the regional breakdown as well, and how we're proposing to let our clients for this framework. So I'll just go through some of the areas here and what the sort of general thinking has been from N8. So N8 was our previous iteration of this framework. So sort of one of the big things we've got back is that was 4 years ago that we procured that last framework. And one of the issues we've got on there is that the market has moved a lot since that was put out to market. And we wanted to ensure that when we put this framework out, that at the end of the 4 years, it was as relevant now and it will be relevant then as well. So one of the big things we've got to look at is future proofing. We've all had various different technologies that have come out in the media recently, the push to hydrogen, air source heat pumps, various different routes. So it is kind of, for our side, it's like being a technical officer with a crystal ball on the side trying to predict what the next 4 years is going to be. So we wanted to allow the framework to have that flexibility, to have that over the time scale, for us to be able to look at new technologies and how we can incorporate them so that clients and contractors will have a pathway for new technologies. Another big part of what we wanted to focus on for this framework was a fabric first approach. We've just had some discussions about PAS and the decent homes, etc. And we think this is probably going to be a big feeder. It's not just going to be installing potentially one technology. You're going to be looking at multiple different disciplines when you're approaching potentially a project. So that, again, we have a multidisciplinary work stream, which I will discuss further when we get there. But the idea is that everything I show you will be incorporated under that multidisciplinary. So if you were looking to go and do an entire project, then you have that access to be able to look at multiple technologies. Another area that we really wanted to push further with on this work stream as well is we're fully aware of the complications potentially with grant funding, with getting access into this market, and this might apply to more rural regions, more rural councils, smaller portfolio holders. But we had a lot of feedback that people that could have potentially had projects and could have progressed that further over the previous framework, they were unable to really access the funding. So we've looked at solutions and how we can improve that for our parties as well. And I'll go from here into the proposed scope. So these are the areas that all the work streams will cover. I'll go through them by work stream and just give you a bit of explaining with our rationale. What I'm hoping to do as well is I'll take a break point on each work stream and just get your feedback. Any comments at all. If it's wildly off the page from what your organisation is working on, there'll be no offence to that whatsoever. I'm more than happy to listen to everything. So as I say, this is only stage 1. We've done quite a lot of internal research, and we've gone back and had a look at a lot of the projects that were on the previous frameworks. But at the same time, if it doesn't meet with your organisation, then it's, we'll be wasting everyone's time. So it's key to ensure that we meet what our clients and contractors are requiring. So there's 3 areas that we've kind of focused on as well. One of the issues we had with the previous framework is potentially the value band structure. So what we had before is a split between smaller projects and larger projects. And in some cases, there might have been a potential where the value band, to be honest, isn't required. So I'll give you an example off the top of my head. We've got district heating. If a contractor can deliver a district heating system, we don't feel there would be a need for a value band, for example, because we'd be differentiating on something that we know you could deliver a small or larger project. So it's things like that. It's about trying to make it more accessible for contractors. Where we have put in value bands, it's really to try and say where we've identified an SME potential. And I'll go through that and I'll explain where we found those gaps. But obviously a big part of what we want to do is we do want to promote SMEs. We do want to give them access to this work. And I think it's vital that we all know that over the next 4 years, this will be a growing industry. And what could be an SME today potentially could be a major contractor over the period of time. So we want to be able to not only allow for that flexibility, but also it would be good if we could try and promote that and grow people locally within each area. It's a key driver. And then the last thing I'll touch upon before we go through, one of the things we've tried to do is try to, again, going back to that sort of past 2035 pathway, we're trying to align the framework with that and with public sector terminology as well, so that you can kind of follow the book alongside potentially grant funded applications or projects that you're working on. So we want to make it relevant within asset management departments, and we've tried with the value bands to try and sort of meet them to the project values that you would consider for terms such as minor and major works. Again, the fees that you might see on there might be wildly or different to what your organisation operates on. At the same time, this is where it's become quite difficult, because some people will consider a minor project 100 grand and some people have considered it 5 million. So it's trying to find that benchmark that meets for all parties as well. So I'll just go through and I'll just start straight through the work streams, our thinking behind it, and really why we are where we are. So this is work stream 1. This is in regards to building installation and passive works, and it's really trying to focus on the building envelope of the building. We've broken this down into 8 lots, and you'll see that there are some areas there where we've broken out some of the measures. So what you'll see here is internal insulation. The idea here is to focus on all internal elements, internal wall, pipe work, but potentially floor insulation, various different types. You'll see here that you could potentially argue that these two, lot 2 and 3, cavity wall and loft insulation, could be included within that. However, so I'll give you some rationale. We've broken out loft insulation because we've had a lot of feedback that is a really good target area for SME contractors. So just speaking to various regions around the country, that is an opening. So that's somewhere where we want to try and give that opportunity for SMEs, and hopefully that would encourage use for our clients as well. And you'll see that here that lot 3, which is cavity wall, again, the reason we've broken that out is because it's such a major measure. It's probably going to be the most used measure, and it's the most topical talking point in regards to insulation. We broke it out really mainly due to the fact we didn't want to end up cornering ourselves in saying that you would have to deliver all internal measures, and we have contractors out there that potentially only deliver cavity wall. So we didn't want to make sure we missed the boat, and there were certain contractors that wouldn't be able to approach the framework. What you'll see here as well for lot 4, 5 and 6, what we've tried to do is break out the external insulation and separate that from more of a domestic setting to more of a high-rise situation, which is really kind of touching upon the Grenfell area. I'm not sure if this applies as much to the southwest, because I'm not sure if you guys have a huge amount of high-rise buildings in your area, but in London certainly it's going to be something that's going to be a big talking point in urban areas. The reason we've broken, you'll see there, rain screen cladding out. It's really more of a discussion. So when I'm finished with this slide, I'll open up the floor. But what we're trying to do is we don't want to keep the conversation of Grenfell in the same line as within a domestic setting. We wanted to get that sort of breakaway to show that, you know, this would be a domestic works and this would be for higher rise buildings. Our early thinking is that we'll probably include rain screen cladding under lot 5, so that will just become one lot, and it will literally be under 11 meters and over 11 meters. There's questions potentially there as to whether 11 meters is the right number. We've had some people feedback that 18 meters might be more applicable. So that again is something else that we're going to be researching over this stage 1 period of time, just to work out what would be more applicable. And then ending this lot, we have the ventilation solutions. So again, we've broken it into a minor and major setting as well. So the minor works would cover more sort of smaller works like MVHR systems, and more like standard bathroom, kitchen, ventilation, etc. in a domestic setting. And then in the major side, we're looking at more for a large scale block or an estate where you'd be looking at a one-stop solution, where obviously the works and contractors that you'd be looking for would be quite different to what you would expect in more of a domestic setting. You'll see at the bottom there, we've got some questions. So I've probably touched upon some of them already as well. But I really just want to, at this point, open it up to the floor. If there's any comments, if anyone has any opinions, whether that works for them, I'd be interested to hear if you've got any comments on that or any questions as well. No worries. I'll move on. I am aware that obviously we're in quite a public setting here as well, so some people might be a bit uncomfortable talking about their potentially like what works they're going to be doing. So we will follow up as well after this call with a form, so you can give any feedback on something, and obviously you can go away and speak to colleagues as well and see how that works for your organisation. So and I'm more than happy to follow up with a call as well if anyone has any questions. So I'll move on to work stream 2. So this is primarily heating systems. So again, you'll notice here we have 7 lots, and it covers a wide range of areas, and you could potentially look at some of these and think where do they sit, etc. So obviously we've got domestic boiler heating systems, which is a traditional heating system. Unfortunately, we still are in a position where people are providing oil, gas, and older systems, and we don't actually have an area where it sits in another framework at this current point in time, and it was probably best seen as fitting here still. That is something that's arguably up for question, because I do understand that obviously it's an energy efficiency framework and we're looking at potentially providing newer solutions, but it's just about trying to find where that would sit within the organisation. But we are also potentially looking at where that might sit in the future as well. Lot 10 and 11, you're going to be looking here at 2 different elements. So really how we've done this is we've got domestic boiler systems that will cover more of the major sites. So you'd be looking at larger projects for the traditional systems. And lot 11 is for commercial. So it's again a big question here, but this would be looking at larger scale heating systems within a commercial setting. Again, it would be looking at more of the traditional element. With lot 12 and 13, we have the renewable section here. So that we're looking at domestic sitting properties. So we've got air source heating systems. We're also going to be looking at air to water, various different systems that will be looked at across the 4 years. There's a lot of questions in this area because we have had a lot of feedback over the last couple of months in regards to hydrogen. The argument's been sitting differently in whoever you speak to. So we've spoken to some people that that are quite honestly not taking it very seriously and don't think it's the solution. But then also we on the flip side have British Gas that are making a commitment to 20% of their network will be running on hydrogen by 2028. And we have various investments that look to be coming through over the next few years, alongside our manufacturers, Worcester Bosch and people like that are also now using hydrogen-ready systems as well. So it's an element here that we need to take quite seriously, and something that we are looking at how to develop for this framework, and ensure that obviously if that does become the market solution, that we're ready to be set up for that. The lot 14 and 15, we're looking at more here. We've got ground source heating systems. Again, on the previous framework, this wasn't something that was used at all really within a domestic setting. The solutions that we've kind of really heard on the ground source side is that it would be for more larger scale commercial use. But however, again, if that's wildly different to what your organisation sees it as, we're more than happy to look at that and how that would develop. And lot 15 is district heating. So what you'll see here is just it's really a solution for all district heating systems. We felt we'd block it into one because we felt that the providers that would be offering this solution, they're likely to be able to do all levels of district heating. Again, if that's any different to what you're experiencing, whether you have contractors that will work on smaller projects and not larger, that's something that we really want to hear back on, and whether we need to create that solution. And finally, we have electrical heating. This one's more looking at potentially some of the newer methods, not the old school sort of space heaters that we'd see in past, more like quantum heating and solutions like this that could potentially be used as like an off-grid system, for example. I understand there's a lot there, and it's, as I say, we're on stage 1. We're still looking at that feedback. A lot of what we're going to be doing over this period of time is speaking to people like Worcester Bosch and some of the bigger manufacturers to try and understand what they see this as for the next 4 years. But they also have stuff like approved contractors on their list as well. So we're really interested in trying to touch base with them, what quality checks they're doing, and potentially how we can potentially cross over as well. So there's a lot more we need to do on this. I think this will be looking a lot more developed when we get to stage 2, but for now it's really just trying to cover every single piece that we've received, all the information that we've had back from people, and all the research that we've obviously completed on the previous framework. I don't know if anyone has any comments on that or has any questions or really more any discussion points as to how their organisation's dealing with this. Oh, Penny, you're on mute.
That old chestnut. So Jason
Yeah.
Hawkes from Magna Housing has just put his hand up. Nice to see you, Jason. Over to you.
You too, Penny. Thank you. Yes, a couple of questions. For domestic boilers, do you have another framework that covers sort of gas and oil boilers?
We don't.
You don't. Okay, so it's either here or nowhere as far as you're.
That's really, yeah. That's the current position. It's been a big internal conversation because I completely understand that from the argument point on the perspective, we're offering an energy efficiency framework and we've got gas and oil boilers on here, so I can understand that side. But unfortunately, at a similar time, if we don't put it on here, it hasn't got anywhere to live. And
okay.
Realistically, there are a lot of those projects still ongoing. People are still doing a lot of like-for-like replacements. So we feel it would be stupid not to acknowledge that that is a reality still of the market. Although we would obviously prefer people to start pushing in the direction of more green technologies. I understand. I've been in the housing game myself before. You're looking at numbers as well, and a lot of this work is going to be reliant on the grant funding that will come through from various sectors as well. So yeah, I'm fully aware of that. But yeah, I can understand that one.
Okay, and then the other question is where you've got domestic renewables air source based, and then you've got non-domestic renewables ground source based. What if you've got a block of flats and you want to put a communal ground source in? Where does that fall into those? Again,
the non-domestic side might be something that we change around as a name because I don't want to make it look like we're pigeonholing into one area. I will be honest, we've had a bit more feedback further from developing this that actually there's some areas in Scotland where there's some ground source domestic projects that have just started. So it does look like that conversation's starting to come back in a reversal way. So I if I'm honest with you, when we get to stage 2, I think we'll probably open that to be a little bit more open door for whether it will be in a domestic or non-domestic setting.
Okay, and there's just a general question from the last bit you shared about internal wall insulation and stuff. What accreditations are you asking for from suppliers in terms of that? Because it's frightening how wrong that can go if we're procuring services from someone who doesn't actually know what they're doing.
Precisely. I fully agree with that. That is something that we are investigating. I have had a slide on selection and due diligence requirements, but I don't think we'll probably get enough time. But we are looking at some of the cavity wall insulation guarantees. But I think at the same time, we want to give that access to smaller businesses. But similarly, we don't want to drop the quality. We don't want to end up having sort of that rogue element potentially. I think it's really important that obviously with these measures as well, if you're doing top-ups and cavity, etc., it's really important that you're doing this properly and not just getting someone to come in and just fill the wall. We all know now that the solutions that we're providing need to be looked at as a one-stop solution. So I'm fully aware of that. If you're putting an air source heat pump, for example, in and you didn't have the adequate insulation, then you're already losing effectively. So we're fully aware of that. I'll be totally honest, like I said before, we're on stage 1. What we're trying to do is establish the line, and then what we're going to do during that stage 2 period is speak to manufacturers, speak to the people that are probably going to be creating the solutions, and then we're going to try and look at what requirements they want and what they understand, so we can try and find something that meets the market, but also for you guys ensuring that you're getting the quality.
Thank you, Jason. And Jason, if you have anything that you're using with regards to accreditations that you're happy to share, please forward it on to me via email. That'd be really useful. Thank you. Next up, we have a question from Simon Spencer, Low Carbon Exchange.
Sorry, might be jumping the gun here. In terms of chemical ventilation, MVHR, is that in work stream 3 and 4 that you're about to show us, or
with
where would that sit?
with the ventilation systems? Again, I'll be honest and say, like, we're at a further, we've obviously got a lot of feedback now that we didn't have when we created this. We're probably going to put it into the heating work stream here. It makes sense that really from a mechanical and engineering perspective, if you're doing heating, you're probably going to be looking at those types of solutions as well, and it's probably more applicable within this work stream. The only reason why we had it in work stream 1 originally for ventilation was because we felt that the topic of, obviously with insulation being installed, if you don't have the correct ventilation to go alongside it, we're hearing obviously all the horror stories of damp and mold issues across the country. So at the time, the way we saw that, which was probably a bit short-sighted, was that it would be the same pathway. But I think as we've kind of gone through these conversations, it probably is more relevant within work stream 2 due to the contractors that will be working on it. So I'll be honest, that's probably where we're going to go with that. It will probably sit within this work stream.
Yeah, certainly damp and mold solutions that, you know, can span all of these, can't they? Insulation and ventilation and, you know, the treatment of it as well. And yeah, no, certainly one to look at, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. I'll just double check if we've got anything else on the floor, and if not, I'll move on to the next work stream.
No, we're all good, I think, Nick.
Yeah, I'll go through to the next one. So this is another area that we really want to develop over the next 4 years. So there's a couple of points here to mention. The first one we have is building management systems. So what we're looking at here is really, there's a lot of stuff that will probably align more with the BIM side of things. So we're looking at, you know, we've had a lot of manufacturers come and discuss with us in regards to systems where you would like from more of an asset management perspective of looking at how, you know, like for repairs, for example, you know, looking at products, and you can match that up with a management system, but also looking at potentially how we integrate that with district heating systems, etc. The other side of this we've also got as well, which is probably a topic that's become more relevant over the last year with the energy crisis and the surge in pricing. We've had a lot of feedback from people where over that period of time, the costs have risen so highly that the previous setup they would have had, maybe where they didn't really meter individual properties, etc., that wasn't really looked at. And then obviously with the price surge, it's now quite an important discussion. So it's something here that we've looked at is individual metering. There's an argument here that we could probably include that under one BMS lot. If you can do one, you could probably do the other, but we did separate it due to the fact that obviously it being quite a relevant topic, and it's something that's going to grow. Another discussion point we've had on this as well is that this might not just extend to, for example, for a heating system. We're looking at other areas for monitoring as well, you know, like PV, for example. How much PV is that generating so that people can sort of manage that? Obviously, another one we're looking at is EV charging stations. Obviously, how much power that consumes, whether there's, you know, an element there that people need to charge. Various different areas, battery storage as well. So we are sort of looking at how we can provide solutions and how people can look at, monitor and manage these new technologies, and obviously have a look at it from more of an overview. I don't know if anyone's got any feedback on that, whether they've had any difficulties with that sort of area this year, and whether also they're looking at metering other potential technologies that we haven't identified, whether that's something you guys are looking at. Again, I'll always be around afterwards, so if there's anything that pops into your head or you have a discussion with a colleague, etc., more than happy to follow up with a call and sort of look at how that works for you guys. The next work stream we've got is work stream 4. This is electrical, and this is primarily focusing on 3 areas. We have solar PV and battery storage, and electrical vehicle charging as well. So just a little couple of areas here. We have had some feedback previously about with solar PV and battery that potentially we might separate these two areas, because a lot of people are potentially now going back to legacy PV installations and looking at providing a battery storage solution to that. If I'm honest, internally, our discussions have been that we think that if you can deliver one, you could potentially deliver the other. However, at the same time, if I'm wrong there, and that's not something that you guys have faced and you've actually got installers that are only offering one, then we would obviously also be keen to ensure to hear that feedback. But similar at the same time, the reason why we're trying to group it is we don't want to create an extra piece of work for contractors to complete that works if it's not necessary, and therefore potentially putting people off the bid as well. But similar at the same time, I don't want to offer a solution where we say that you have to offer both, and then we've got a load of contractors that only offer battery storage or only simply offer solar PV. So it's kind of finding that bridge, and that will be fed back on what our contractors and what our clients are saying on that. And then lastly, we also have electrical vehicle charging as well. We're aware of the approved documents. We're aware of obviously that now if you're constructing a new property, then you would additionally need to provide an EV charging point, and it's obviously also something that's becoming quite more seen in planning conditions, etc., or more major refurbishment projects and things like that. So it's something that we need to encourage, but we also, over the time period of this, over the next 4 years, we believe there's going to be a lot of grant funding opportunities and a lot of areas to allow people to increase this network for electrical vehicle charging. So that's really where we are with it at the moment. Again, like I said earlier, we're not just looking at today, we've got to look over this 4-year period as well. And in 4 years' time, that market, we feel, is going to be a lot more developed and it's going to be a lot more understanding as to what people are going to be doing with that. Oh, yeah, Simon?
Yeah, will this lot incorporate communal systems, for HAs that are looking to cover their costs or generate an income potentially? Is there a way that you can factor that in with those sizes of systems being so varied?
Yeah, this is something we need to. This is something we're going to hone down in the stage 2 area as to what products we use as well, what safety measures we're looking at. We're getting in contact with MCS at the moment, and we're going to be talking to them over the next few weeks as to what sort of solutions people are providing and how that's best working with their contractors as well. So that is something that we're going to have a clearer picture on, I think, when we get to stage 2.
Good.
Oh, Jason, I can see your hand up.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, actually. We're starting to get these nascent systems come in where you can put communal solar on roofs of blocks of flats, and how you divvy that up, not necessarily via batteries. And I mean, if for that reason alone, I think it's worthwhile looking at whether to separate the solar and the battery storage. Because for some of us as well, the HAs at the moment, we're not geared up financially for putting batteries in everywhere. That doubles the cost of PV, if not more. And that puts us in a position where if we can only do one, then we'll do the solar.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as I say, that when we created this, it was pre-market, so it was based upon what we felt at the time. However, yeah, I've had further feedback from other regions as well. We had someone from a large health organisation the other week that have got obviously a huge asset base, and they were looking to potentially cover their entire commercial blocks with solar PV. So I think, yeah, we're starting to see obviously that people have got different ideas and different solutions on how they're going to be doing this over that period. So we want to obviously ensure that we don't end up saying you have to install battery storage and there's potentially large scale commercial PV installers out there that we completely missed the boat on. So yeah, fully aware of that, and we will develop that over this period of time as to ensure that we don't miss any market at all, for example. I'll just give another thing as well on this. There's something that's obviously come through over this year's period as well. Another thing we've been hearing a lot on is, I don't know if anyone's seen it on here, but we had a government report in January this year about second life batteries. So one of the big discussion points has been for example, if you've got a Tesla car, the battery in there over time will obviously lose its power and slowly degenerate. However, once that's finished that life cycle in a car, there's potential for that to still be used within another setting because the power required is in a different way. So there's other areas we're looking at as well on that and how that can potentially be incorporated. We do have some sort of worries about how that will be looked across in terms of safety, etc., because obviously everyone's aware of the conversations like scooters being banned on trains at the moment because batteries are blowing up. So we want to be able to look at also how that safety network can be incorporated, and obviously we don't want to end up potentially putting out products that have an element of danger in there. So that's another side of things that we're looking at as well. Yeah, that's where we're at really with that at the moment. I don't know if anyone else has any feedback. Oh, Penny.
Hi Nick, we have a question from Cara Naden in the chat box. She asks, would renewable energy tariffs also be included where direct renewable energy supply e.g. PV, isn't possible, but also to purchase renewable energy supply from the grid when not enough direct supply is possible?
I'll be quite frank, no, I haven't. That isn't something that we've seen yet. Again, these are the sort of, this is what I mean before, these sort of conversations will be something that we're investigating. Whether that best sits on this framework might be another discussion as well about how we make that work. But the tariff side is interesting. There's a lot of sort of feedback that we're getting, how people are offering different solutions. It's definitely developed over the last few years, and I think it's stuff like that that we think, you know, in 4 years' time there will potentially be a bigger market there. So it's making sure that we find those gaps. So yeah, we'll definitely do some more investigation in that and how we can potentially make that work for this framework.
Thank you, Cara.
Brilliant. I'll move on to the next work stream. I'm aware of time as well. I don't want to end up eating into time and then end up like moving and then we have to rush the last few bits. So this is the next big thing that we really want to introduce on this framework. This is a really key area, I think, and it's something that we've had a lot of feedback on, where potentially 5 or 6 years ago, people, or even older now, people have installed their first levels of air source heat pumps, for example, or various other technologies, and they've got to a period and they've realised that they potentially didn't have a solution for servicing and maintenance. Some people, I think we've had a lot of feedback, had the idea that their current heating engineer would just be able to go in and just do it, and that wasn't the case. So it's something that we really want to look at is providing a service and maintenance access stream, not only just for these like heat pumps, for example, which is one discussion, but we're looking at other areas as well. So the other 2 areas we're looking at is ventilation systems. So obviously one of the big topics recently has been MVHRs with the filters. Loads of people didn't realise that they didn't need to go in and change them. They go in about 3 or 4 years later and the filter's completely black and the machine isn't working properly anymore at all. So that's what we're trying to do, is look at a solution there, how we can provide those sort of solutions. And it won't just be for MVHRs, it'll be looking at more extensive systems as well. And again, as I was saying, over the 4-year period, we need to be relevant. So it's ensuring that we have that access point, that if new technologies come through, then we have a pathway for maintenance engineers to be able to get onto our framework, and we can obviously provide a solution. The other area as well is we've got solar PV and related technologies. Again, from my own experience, we a previous authority, we did the sort of scheme where we sold the roof space to a provider for the 25 years and then realised that when we had a roof leak that the PV would have to come down and we probably didn't necessarily own the roof space. So I've been in that scenario, and it's something that I felt quite passionate about. There wasn't really enough there for people to provide a solution for that area. So it's looking at all those, but we're also opening the door up to any other technologies. I mean, we have heard a couple of stories since developing this of people being able to not access a service and the maintenance engineer. So it's something that we would like to keep the door open for any product that we think is relevant over this framework. Oh, yeah, Simon.
Yeah, we're seeing some random one-off pigeon meshing contracts going out alongside or as part of decoration contracts. So we, from our perspective, certainly the servicing of solar PV, it would sit better in one of those whilst someone's up there servicing it. So something just to make sure that you try and incorporate if you haven't already.
Yeah, fully aware of that. And that's something, again, we will be developing that one, and how extensive that will be developed over that stage 2 period. Yeah, I think this is something that's going to be really key. We've had a lot as well. We've had some feedback now where some of the bigger organisations in London are now making it a requirement that if you're doing heating servicing on their normal traditional systems, they also need to provide a solution for their renewable systems as well. So it's making sure that potentially we look at how that can be sort of bumped into areas as well, how we can look at it from a whole issue rather than just, you know, pigeonholing people into renewables and into traditional. It's about trying to make the market move in that direction.
Just a further comment from Cara Nedden, Nick. She says, be great to also look at how to engage with community energy, either to install community supported renewable energy generation or local purchasing options.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about this, and there's another that what we'll get into is when we get to workstream 7, this will probably be a lot more focused on the what we're saying, sort of like the consultancy side. It's not just a solution just for consultancy that we've done there. We're looking at not just grant funding support, but we've also got more of that whole scale solution. We're fully aware as well that we've got a lot of smaller organisations in rural areas across the country that maybe as an organisation not very big, but if you aggregated them together with a few other organisations, then there's that growth potential, and then obviously more bigger contractors might be interested in that work. So yeah, that is something we're aware of. We've seen a few different things like the substations as well that people are sort of buying into, these like communal substations. So that is something that we really want to develop over the course of this framework, and yeah, appreciate that feedback. Shall I move on to workstream 6? I think we'll go through to that. So as I discussed earlier, a big belief on our side is the fabric approach, the whole house solution as we call it. Something that we think is a key driver obviously for this framework is not just providing one-stop solution, but looking at it from a whole house perspective. We know a lot of the past 2035 solutions are going to be based upon that as well. It's going to be looking at how to increase the property. And I heard earlier someone else mentioned decent homes too as well. I know that's currently being developed. So I think a lot of these things are going to sort of move into this area. I know we're not fully clear yet, but we want to make it really evident from day one that if you want to come in here and not just put a solar PV panel up, but you're looking at it from, you know, the whole house solution, putting a heat pump in and the PV that will run with it and the installation, that we have that ability to deliver those works and we have the right contractors in place. We've broken it into 3 areas. The terminology we're using here is small, minor and major. This has come from a lot of feedback, and obviously we've got people in our organisation that have come from a housing background as well. So it was really kind of trying to meet the terminology of what we would see within asset management departments across the country. What you'll see there is we haven't got any value bands attached to that. Realistically, at this stage, we're really hoping to see what the market brings back to us, what level we put at for each area. So what we've had some people feedback that they would consider small works 250, and then I had a gentleman last week that said to me that we wouldn't go any small works are up to 5 million. So the last thing I wanted to do was sort of put a fee on there and then say that was it, because it's not the case. This will be developed upon the feedback we get from our clients, what level they see those bandings for more of a smaller project, a minor project, and then obviously a large scale project. I don't know if anyone's got any feedback on that, whether they've got, you know, benchmarks that they're aware of or where they see that separation. That would really help us develop in stage 2. Again, I can fully aware that we're in quite a public setting, so some people might not want to sort of shout out numbers that they've got within their organisation. So I'm more than happy to follow that conversation up with people and see where that develops.
These might also.
Oh, sorry, go on. Penny.
Sorry, Nick, I was just going to say these might also align with organisational kind of sign-off procedures as well for clients and how they can deliver things and how much they can deliver.
Yeah, and it's important for us as well to have the contractors delivering the right suitability of value as well. So again, obviously we all want to use SMEs and we want to see that moving forward, but at a similar time, there's no point putting them in competition with a tier 1 contractor. It's just not fair, and past experience has shown that it doesn't work. So it's something that we really want to do, is ensure that there is that ability to go to an SME, but they're not losing out at the same time to competing with some of the biggest contractors in the country. So that is something that we're really aware of and something that we really want to try and ensure we develop. Okay, I'll just move on to the last work stream then. So the last one we've got here is, I kind of touched upon it earlier, is the consultancy work stream. So the word is quite open, and where we're going with this, we're looking at various different types of strategies and how we're going to approach this. So really, I'll give you a bit of background on where we're at and what sort of areas we want to cover. But we've got sort of 3 areas here before we get onto the pass where we want to sort of target. So we've sort of spoken to 3 different organisations and a few other people in the background as well to sort of understand how, from their business side, how they're managing that and what solutions they're providing. But the 3 areas we've got really here are energy policy and strategy. So this is looking at really smaller organisations who haven't got that ability to develop like a long-term plan, like a 5-year plan, for example. And this is also looking at ways to try and strategize and for example, when the new grant fund comes flying out the woodwork, that they have that ability to be able to look at that and potentially apply to that. So they'll be able to understand their stock, what the potential solutions they've got, and then obviously developing a long-term strategy and how the organisation plans to decarbonise, etc. Further to that, we've also got the grant funding support. We've got a lot of people that have fed back that they haven't had that access to grant funding, not because they couldn't, but because they don't understand the hoops that you need to jump through, for example, etc. And it's a big talking point. I'm fully aware of some of the funds we've had over the last few years have been quite hard to get access to, because you're required to be projects meant to be commenced, for example, in some cases, or you need to have a contractor appointed, and it's like, how do you have a contractor appointed if you didn't know the funding was there? So we're aware of all of those conversations, and it's something that we really want to be able to support organisations for. And the last one we've got on there as well is the management agent side. So it's looking at really from commencement all the way over to handover of a project, and then obviously the management agent will also support potentially the aftermath as well, because obviously there will be potentially funding streams that will pay over a certain period of time, so you will need someone to obviously manage that side of things as well. So that's something, again, that as a solution we've spoken to a few consultants over the country that are offering that pathway, that will manage every part of the process for organisations. I'm aware that doesn't suit for everyone, but as I say, we do have some organisations that are looking for that solution. And then finally, I'm aware there's a question, I will get to that. The last side we've got is the PAS 2035 and PAS 2038. We've separated them because 35 being within the domestic setting and 38 being in the commercial. We've got quite a few surveyors over the country that are doing 35, but realistically, the feedback we've had on 2038, there's barely any surveyors in the country on the commercial side. We felt it would be best to separate that, because if we link them together, then we'd potentially be cutting out the majority of the market that offers 2035. So that's where we're at with that at the moment. But the PAS 2035 consultancy will be someone that will be looking to manage that pathway from conception, again, all the way to the finish line. I think we've got a question from someone in the chat, I believe.
Yes, we do. There's a couple of questions now. So Simon Spencer's asked if we're going to consider covering green training in our framework, courses, etc., covering things like assessors, coordinators, maintenance of renewables. That could be something the consultants could perhaps deliver on.
Yeah, I can see that angle. It's I think we can all sit here realistically right now and say that as it currently sits, we haven't got enough surveyors or assessors in this country to meet the demand of 2030. I think a lot of us will probably be sitting here as well and question whether the 2030 targets are realistic, which probably, if I'm being honest with you, I don't think they are. So I'm completely aware of that. We're really keen to ensure that market is growing over time. I think I heard a stat the other day, someone said to me, is that the current 2030 carbon neutral plan would require over 1 million retrofit installs a year for us to meet that target. That's not possible. There's not enough installers in the country to do that. We're fully aware of that. So yeah, that is something that we could look at. We have had discussions, not that I see that someone's just said installers as well. Yeah, I think it's something we need to do. We need to potentially look at something on our traditional lines as well. We've got people obviously appointed to our traditional frameworks, and maybe we look at, some sort of access points for those guys over the few years to be able to, convert over to these new industries. Again, we're going to probably try and offer. We've had a lot of discussion about this, but we're going to be looking at working groups. We're going to be looking at various different things to ensure that we're touching base over this 4 years' time with the market, so that we don't just put this framework out and say, see you in 4 years' time and leave everyone to it. So yeah, that's another way that we can do, and we'll do webinars, training sessions, and potentially look at, how we can help people get access into that market. That is something we want to take very seriously. And agreed, I'll just in that other comment about the SMEs, that is another key thing. Like I was saying earlier, this is that market, this is that gap, and we all want SMEs to grow, and we all want them to be able to deliver works. It looks good for everyone, if you're using a local contractor, and then obviously that's their ability to grow as well. And I think obviously this being a new emerging market, that is probably the best opportunity anyone's going to have to get that. So yeah, taking that on board as well.
And sorry, Nick, did you see Mark Reed? Nice to see you, Mark. Mark Reed's comment about managing agents, assuming this is covering CDM 2015.
That would ensure so whoever the managing agent lot, we might change the name to make it more of a relevant perspective, but that would be a principal contracting role effectively. They would be there to run not only the principal contracting side, but obviously all the administration to go with it, so the grant funding, access, etc. They would just be a one-stop shop, so a client could go to them and go, this is what we have, what do we do, basically. That's really what we're planning with that side. Brilliant. That is the end of the 7 work streams. What I've got here is a map of the regional area. I could sit here and attempt to say that I know the Southwest completely, but I think Penny would probably be better suited to explain that.
That's okay. I'll take over. Thanks everyone for sticking with us. We're in the last 5 minutes now. This is the main question I was really keen to ask you all. How should we split the region? So with a lot of our newer frameworks, we've split the region down to its ITL level 2 now, which splits the Southwest into the 4 sections you see here. So we've got Gloucester, Bristol, Wiltshire and the northern bits, K1, Dorset and Somerset, Devon and then Cornwall on its own. So 4 distinct areas in the Southwest. We'd be happy to do this again. However, our experiences of N8 and other frameworks have been that we found the same companies are featuring on all of the lots anyway. There's a very small pool, as we know, of companies that are able to deliver retrofit and decarbonisation works in the Southwest. I'd be really keen to understand your thoughts. The other thing we need to consider is if we're going to have slightly smaller value bands on some of the areas, that is our opportunity to engage SMEs, which is a huge strategic area of importance for the Southwest Procurement Alliance and LHC Group. So if we went for the whole Southwest as a lot, would we be putting ourselves in a position where we are by default excluding the onboarding of SMEs? What are people's thoughts? What are your feelings? So NUTS level 1 is the whole Southwest and level 2 is the 4 areas of the Southwest. If a few people could write 1 or 2 into the chat or put up your hands, any feedback at all on this particular conundrum that I'm trying to get through would be really welcome from you all as clients. Jason.
So I can't speak for the likes of Simon and LCX as to whether this makes it more difficult for them. Would the larger contractors then need to apply it into all 4 geographical areas, or would you have one that covered the whole of the Southwest as well?
Most of the way
I'm all for this. I think it's brilliant for the SMEs because, you know, if you are Cornwall based and you're a small firm, that's fantastic because then you know you can just say, OK, I'm concentrating on Cornwall. But for the likes of Simon, I know I don't wish to put words in his mouth or defend him because he can do that himself. But the ability to sort of sign into all of those without having to make 4 separate applications. What's the sort of thinking there?
So Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, with our other frameworks, it's not a case of asking the contractors to duplicate their submissions. They're able to apply uplifts on certain areas and things like that, aren't they? They'll submit one set of rates and then they can apply uplifts or discounts accordingly on the different geographical parts that they're applying to. Is that right?
That is correct, yeah. So and just a little comment on that, we will, if we did, for example, go down that scenario of putting 4 different areas where they need to apply for, we'd make that process as simple as possible to ensure that we're not creating too much additional work, because if it's beneficial, we agree we should do that. But at the same time, I don't want to put it in a position where we end up giving the contractors, you know, 20 hours extra work, and then we could be in a position where they go, it's not for me, I'm not going to bid for that because it takes too much time. So it's about trying to get that balance. We will obviously want to make sure that you've got relevant people in the right areas, but also ensuring that we can get as much access into the framework as possible.
So for us, we've got Mark Reed here today from Coastline down in Cornwall, and it's Cornwall that really poses us the biggest challenge. Really, it's all well and good having a company that are happy to deliver works in Bristol, but will they go down to Penzance? And in most cases, a lot of cases, it's a no. So Mark, you raise a really good point in the chat, and it's really important that we work collaboratively as a region, as clients, as framework provider and contractors to upskill the SMEs that are here. And upskill smaller organisations as they kind of work their way up to a position where they're able to deliver works in the region.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a big believer in the SME side as well. And I know I think I've seen quite a few comments in here that I think is probably meeting that line. And I think probably quite a lot more so in the southwest as well, where you're looking more down the lower regions in Cornwall, etc. I'm fully aware of like the logistical issues, etc., that you guys have down there. So I do want to make sure that we do have that development, we do have that ability to grow smaller organizations, and it's a win-win for everyone. You guys get the access to a local market, and we also get to see the potential growth of an organisation in a local area. So I think it's a really, really key area that we need to grow over this framework time.
It is, from the comments, it's really looking like the four areas are probably the best way to go forward. And in addition, during the framework evaluation, we ask all of the contractors to submit regional capability answers to regional capability questions, so we can drill down into those. So that's interesting. So I note that we are nearly at the 12:30 mark. So thank you again to both Simon and to Nick for your presentations. We really appreciate you supporting us at this webinar. Thank you to all the attendees who've participated in the discussion, made comments, put your hands up. That's absolutely brilliant to get some feedback from you on this key product here in the Southwest. We will be issuing the presentations to you. You'll have an opportunity over the next few weeks or so to come back to us if you would like to discuss any of the points further, or submit some additional feedback. That would be absolutely great. So thank you all. We'll leave you to the rest of your Monday, and we'll look forward to catching up really soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.